The timing of this latest development on love and marriage, Huntsville is raising some serious questions. Martell Holt's alleged former mistress is finally stepping into the show after years of being one of the most talked about people connected to his past, and now Tisha's mom is weighing in. But here's the part that has people talking. According to the discussion surrounding her recent live stream, Tisha's mom appears to be much more comfortable with this woman joining the cast, as long as certain subjects stay off the table, particularly anything involving Tisha, Maurice, or their family. And that immediately raises a bigger question. If this woman is being brought onto the show because of the history and controversy surrounding her connection to Martell, how realistic is it to expect that the conversation will suddenly stay neatly contained? Because for years, this story has been connected to Melody, Martell, the cast, and some very serious allegations and disagreements. Now that the woman at the center of so much of that conversation is finally on the show, the real question may not be whether she creates drama. It may be whose history gets discussed when she finally gets the opportunity to tell her side on television. And that is where things get very interesting. For anyone who has followed love and marriage, Huntsville, the story surrounding Martell, Melody, and the woman commonly discussed as his former mistress is not exactly new. This situation has been part of the show's larger history for years. The relationship, the fallout from it, and the accusations and counterclaims surrounding it have repeatedly become part of public conversations among the cast and viewers. But the major difference now is that this woman is reportedly entering the show herself. That changes the dynamic completely. When someone is discussed from outside the show, cast members and viewers can debate what they believe happened. But when that person actually becomes part of the program, there is suddenly an opportunity for her to speak directly, respond to old claims, and potentially challenge versions of events that viewers have heard before. That's why the reaction from Tisha's mom is getting so much attention. The discussion suggests that she may be open to this new addition, but with an important condition: don't make her daughter and son-in-law the target. And honestly, that's understandable from a mother's perspective. If someone enters a reality show and begins discussing your family, you are naturally going to have something to say about it. But there's another side to that conversation. If the entire reason this casting decision is interesting is because of this woman's history with people connected to the show, can the producers really expect the story to remain completely separate from those relationships? That's the question viewers are going to be watching closely. What makes this especially interesting is the apparent shift in how people are discussing this woman now that she has a place on the show. For years, her name has been associated with one of the most controversial chapters of Martell and Melody's relationship. There have been interviews, social media discussions, accusations, responses, and plenty of opinions from people on all sides. But now she is no longer simply someone being talked about from the outside. She's potentially part of the cast's current storyline, and that creates an entirely different level of pressure. Because if she talks about Destiny, Tisha, Maurice, Martell, Melody, or anyone else connected to the history, viewers are naturally going to compare what she says now with what has been said publicly in the past. That doesn't mean every old claim is automatically true. It doesn't mean every accusation is proven. And it certainly doesn't mean viewers should accept every new statement without questioning it. But it does mean the audience has a reason to pay attention. One of the biggest questions is whether the show is actually going to let her tell a broader story, or whether producers are going to steer her toward one specific conflict. There has already been plenty of speculation that Destiny could become one of her primary storylines. If that's what happens, viewers will probably ask whether that is the entire reason she was brought onto the show. Because if the goal is simply to create conflict between two cast members, that's one thing. But if the audience expects this woman to address the history that made her famous in the first place, then avoiding that history could feel strange. And that's where the reaction from Tisha's mom becomes even more interesting. If she's saying, in effect, that certain topics should be off limits, viewers are going to naturally wonder whether everyone is being held to the same standard. That's not necessarily proof that anyone is trying to hide anything. It's simply a question about how reality television works. When a controversial figure enters a cast, the audience expects the past to come with them. You can't always separate the person from the history that made them relevant. The biggest issue here may actually be the question of who gets to control the narrative. For years, viewers have watched different people tell different versions of the same events. One person says one thing, another person denies it, someone else adds another detail. Then, social media gets involved. And suddenly, The original issue becomes 10 different arguments. That's reality television. But the problem comes when people try to completely rewrite the history after the fact. If this woman is going on to the show, viewers deserve to hear the context surrounding her involvement, while also understanding that her statements are her perspective and should be treated accordingly. The same standard should apply to everyone. If Melody makes a claim, viewers should question it. If Martell makes a claim, viewers should question it. If Tisha or Maurice make a claim, question it. And if this new cast member makes a claim, question that too. That's what makes this situation particularly fascinating. The conversation shouldn't automatically become, believe her because she's finally on television. It also shouldn't become, ignore her because of her past. Instead, viewers should pay attention to what is actually said, what can be supported, and what remains disputed. And then there's the Melody factor. Even though Melody is no longer at the center of the current cast, her name continues to appear whenever people discuss Martell's past. That alone tells you how powerful that storyline has been for the franchise. But there is a major difference between acknowledging the history and constantly dragging an ex-wife back into every new storyline. If this new chapter turns into another round of blaming Melody for the breakdown of the relationship, that's going to raise questions. Because whatever happened inside that marriage, the responsibility for a relationship belongs to the people who were actually in it. A third person entering the picture doesn't suddenly erase everything that happened between the married couple before, during, or after that situation. And the idea that two people should simply reunite because they share children is also much more complicated than it sounds. Co-parenting and reconciliation are not the same thing. Two people can have children together and still decide that remaining married isn't healthy for them. So when people say that Melody and Martell should simply get back together for the kids, that's not a decision outsiders can make for them. Their personal history is much more complicated than a television storyline. Now, there is another way to look at Tisha's mom's reaction. Perhaps she isn't trying to control the entire storyline. Perhaps she's simply protecting her daughter. From that perspective, it makes perfect sense that she would say, essentially, that people can discuss whatever they want until her family becomes the target. A parent is going to defend their child. And if she believes certain claims about her daughter or son-in-law are unfair, she has every right to push back. There's also another possibility. Maybe production really does believe that this new cast member can bring fresh energy to a show that has struggled to maintain the same level of attention surrounding its earlier seasons. That's not unusual for reality television. Shows constantly introduce new people, new conflicts, and new relationships in an effort to keep viewers watching. The question is whether the strategy actually works. Because bringing someone controversial onto a show can generate headlines, but headlines don't automatically create a successful long-term storyline. If viewers feel that the new cast member is being used only to recreate old drama, they may eventually lose interest. But if she brings a genuinely different perspective and has her own story beyond her connection to Martell, then the situation could become much more interesting. That's something we'll have to see play out. The biggest question moving forward is whether this new addition can create a storyline that stands on its own. If every conversation immediately circles back to Melody and Martell, then the show may once again find itself stuck in the same cycle. But if this woman has her own experiences, conflicts, relationships, and perspective, then viewers could be introduced to something different. There is also the question of destiny. If the reported direction of the storyline involves tension between Destiny and this new cast member, viewers will want to understand why. What happened between them? What is the history? And why is that relationship important enough to become part of the current season? Those questions could provide the show with a fresh storyline, but the Melody question isn't going away either. If Martell continues bringing up Melody even when she isn't directly involved in a conversation, viewers may continue asking whether he has actually moved on from that chapter of his life. Again, that's an interpretation, not a confirmed fact. Only Martell knows exactly how he feels. But reality television is built around what people say and do publicly, so viewers are naturally going to analyze those moments. And if Melody's name continues appearing in discussions surrounding the new cast member, the audience will probably keep asking the same thing. Why is someone who isn't currently part of the main cast still such a major part of the conversation? That could become one of the most interesting themes surrounding the next chapter of the show. At the end of the day, I think the most interesting part of this entire situation isn't simply that Martell's alleged former mistress is joining Love and Marriage, Huntsville. It's what happens once she actually starts talking. Will she focus on her own story? Will the show push her toward conflict with destiny? Will old relationships and accusations come back into the conversation? And will people suddenly have a different attitude toward her now that she's officially part of the cast? Those are the questions I'm watching. Because reality television has a way of bringing old stories back when viewers least expect them. But one thing should remain consistent. Allegations are allegations, opinions are opinions, and viewers should hear the different sides before deciding what they believe. As for Melody and Martell, I don't think outsiders can simply decide that two people should reunite because they have children together. Whatever happens between them is ultimately their personal decision. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think bringing Martell's alleged former mistress onto the show will actually create a fresh storyline? Or is the show simply reopening old drama? And do you think Melody's name will continue to be part of the conversation, even though she's no longer at the center of the cast? Let me know what you think in the comments.